All clubs won 76 games in 2023, 76 games in 2024, or as Ben Cherington would put it, more wins. They're about to go to 75 wins in 2025. Good morning to you. Good Tuesday morning. I'm Dan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Pirates. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or hockey, I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Penguins in the same place that you found this. The PECOTA projections. I told you, they all have cutesy names. Been that way for a while when it comes to baseball's advanced analytics community. This comes from Baseball Prospectus, which has been around forever. And they put together team projections. And they did so and released them for the National League Central yesterday. The Pirates have a simulated 75.1 wins and a simulated 86.9 losses. I'm going to have to assume that the 0.9 loss was like a real rough one in Milwaukee or something, that just counted for an extra something. Overall, they are seen as being the lowest scoring team in the division at 672 runs, and they give up the second most runs, a little bit surprisingly, at 732. They are projected to have a 5.8% chance of making the playoffs. 5.8. The divisional order was what I found more interesting than anything. For one, the Reds are the team that's placed behind the Pirates in the standings, which does not account, I would say, for the Terry Francona factor. Francona's not finishing in last place, okay? This guy's a special manager. The team that's in first place was my other thing that jumped out, because you're starting to see a lot of this, that the Cubs are held in very high regard. And if that feels like it's out of nowhere, it probably shouldn't, because they've done some things this offseason. They've really recommitted. They've been highly visible in the Chicago community. They're not bragging or boasting, but they're making it known that they're expected to be a lot better. They show up here as 91 and 71, third best record in the majors, behind only the Braves and you-know-who. So I look at this more from a standpoint of, well, let's see the Pirates and how they're graded versus how the rest of the division looks, because that's still where you play the bulk of your schedule. Cubs with 91 wins, the Brewers with 80 wins, the Cardinals with 79 wins. You would think that the Cubs and the Brewers are both going to make the playoffs. That wouldn't appear to bode well for anybody in the remainder of the division, whether it's the Pirates or the always competitive Cardinals or Francona's Reds. And that would also suggest to me that the Central will be one of the tougher divisions, which also does not work in the Pirates' favor. Now, look, you can go back, for years and years and see which of these projections are dead on. You can see how much they mean, as long as it's understood. And this is the most important part. The word is projections, not predictions. These are mathematical analyses. They're not dudes trying to show how hot their takes can be. They're taking a bunch of information, shoving it all into the same shredder, seeing what gets spit out, and they just mark it down. There's nothing else to it. It's literal science. So don't think of this in the same vein as, say, what they do in football, where everybody's got some kind of smoldering concept as to how this team or that team is going to do and who's going to end up in the Super Bowl. That's none of this. That's not this. I wouldn't be wasting your time with it. This is math based on current rosters that have real people populating them. And I'm going to repeat here, from whenever I brought this subject up with the Zips projections that came out a week ago, another cutesy nickname, another reliable projection, that there isn't a peak of his prime, Roberto Clemente, who the Pirates could add in right field, who would make this into a playoff team. If they're at 75 wins per PECOTA, and they've taken a step backward from the teams we just saw that had 76 and 76, there's not a player who can make, my goodness, what would that require? 7 wins of difference. There isn't a 7-WAR player out there. And if there were, these guys sure wouldn't be either uncovering him or paying him. And so the reason that I point this out isn't to paint some kind of gloomy picture. You don't need me to do that. It's there. It's the math. It's to stress that right now, on the 4th of February, less than 2 weeks away from Bradenton, everybody in that building knows this. Think about that for a second. Everybody in that building, all the way up to Bob Nutting, they know this. They have seen these figures. They undoubtedly have their own. If they're realistic, they'll say the same thing. They know this, and they're doing not a damn thing about it. When we come back, J1Q.
It's Gun Storage Check Week. Help prevent unwanted access to your firearms. No one wants their unsecured gun to be used in an accident, a suicide, or a crime. Use lockboxes, safes, and locks to secure your firearms. Learn more at gunstoragechek.org. That's gunstoragechek.org. Brought to you by NSSF, the Firearm Industry Trade Association.
Today's J1Q comes from Goose, who says, DK, why did the Federal Street analytical geniuses give extensions to Brian Hayes, Brian Reynolds, and Mitch Keller if they then chose to cut spending at first base and right field and the bullpen when the team has clear needs to improve upon a 76-win season? Were those extensions just window dressing to demonstrate commitment, all while planning on being cheaper for the other holes on the team? And I get that the offseason isn't over, but Rowdy Tellez, Aroldis Chapman, Edward Olivares, and Michael A. Taylor all cost way more than what the Pirates have done this offseason, so I can't see it any other way beyond just cutting spending when it's needed the most. Goose, I think very little of the way this baseball team is run. I think very little of the ownership. I think very little of the management. I think very little of the instruction. I think very little of the game-to-game strategy. But I'm not the conspiratorial type, and I'm definitely not the type to take something like that and stretch it back over several years. In fact, I think each of these 3 cases is really different, meaning Hayes, Reynolds, Keller, as were the direct circumstances that led to each. But I'm going to take your question here and I'm going to pick on you a little bit for a different reason, with respect and all that other stuff. You know how this goes. If you were a general manager with the Pirates, you understood what the budgetary constraints would be. You know that going in. And you believe that you have yourself a cornerstone type of player. That's not to stretch any of these 3 beyond what they are. But I certainly feel that Reynolds has proven himself in that regard. Not necessarily a superstar, but he's a very, very good, dependable, and consistent player in the National League. Keller is becoming that. And Hayes just has to get healthy. When you do this, when you make moves like this, when you sign people to long-term contracts that are of a certain age and of a certain experience level and getting kind of close to being free agents, the reason that you do it principally is one that you didn't mention. And most people don't. It's not top of mind in Pittsburgh, even though it really should be. It has been for me. And that's that they don't develop. They don't acquire. They don't nurture. They don't do anything well when it comes to internal talent. I'll go ahead and throw out my obligatory exception in Jared Jones, as well as the possibility of Nick Gonzalez. That's it. That's it. So what you're thinking about as the GM at the time that you make signings like that is, we're not going to have that many holes to fill. We're going to be able to do that internally because we're either going to bring these younger guys along, or even better, we're going to have so many of them that we're going to be able to trade them to get real live players for other positions. That was the old Montreal approach, and it was more recently done quite well by both of the Florida teams. You build up assets, you build up just a crown jewel of a system, and then you distribute those assets as needed. This team, this organization has nothing of the kind. That's why the current outfield in Pittsburgh consists of 2 Neil Huntington trade acquisitions and nobody. Reynolds, O'Neill Cruz, and nobody. This is year 6 of this management team. There isn't a single outfielder to be deployed that this management team had anything to do with. That's the problem. That's the cause. What everyone talks about, respectfully, are symptoms. This is the cause. But we'll go right back to talking about payroll and payroll and payroll. Yes, it's too low, but it's not the cause. And it doesn't come close to excusing the gross mismanagement of this minor league system. I appreciate the question, Goose. You know that. I appreciate everybody who listens to Daily Shot of Pirates. We're going to do another one of these tomorrow.